Start of a new week, Mock Draft Monday, and a very special guest to really explain to us who is Desmond Ridder.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Locked On AZ. Card still locked out of my personal Twitter account. Aaron Freeman joining me. Locked On Falcons. The Arizona Cardinals now have Desmond Ridder. I'm not sure if you were under a rock for the last 72 or 96 hours, but they've got their backup quarterback for the future. What does it all mean? What does it all mean? Aaron's here, gracious enough to come join me. Give us a little insight into the man that is Desmond Ridder, who most likely will be QB2. Competing with Clayton Tune for that role. Aaron, first off, thanks for joining me, dude. I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you having me, Alex. Fun talking about Desmond Ridder. Spent a lot of time over the last year talking about Desmond Ridder with the Falcons' sort of plan to try to raise the floor, to being a playoff team rather than looking to push the ceiling in the ways that most teams tend to look at the quarterback position. So they were figuring, hey, Ridder did some nice things in those final 4 games in 2022. Not enough to completely sell you, but just enough good things so you're like, hey, we get a run game, we get some weapons, we get a good defense. Like, this is a playoff team, especially in the NFC South, and things didn't quite go that way. But the thing I always maintain on Locked On Falcons is they got like 90% of the way there. They just needed to win like 2 more games down the stretch, and they probably would have made the playoffs. But unfortunately for Desmond Ridder, as a 3rd round pick, if he's a 1st round pick, he'd still be the starter for like 3 more years in Atlanta. But 3rd round pick, you get 1 shot. He didn't take advantage of it, and the team is moving on.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the 3-letter word or 3-letter phrase that causes chills all through Atlanta is red zone turnovers from last year. I mean, that's something both he and Taylor Heineke just were atrocious around the red zone. Get down there, get in the 10, get inside the 10. Arthur Smith forgot the Bijan Robinson was on the team. You throw interceptions, rinse and repeat. So let's start with the positives. Desmond Ridder was a very fun watch at Cincinnati. Okay, was a fringe college football playoff team. And, wait, did they make the college football playoff? They didn't make the college football playoff.
They did. They got beat by Alabama that 1 year.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, that's right. Clayton Tune was a fringe college football playoff team coming out of Houston playing against Ridder. So give me some positives that translated from college into the NFL that you saw pretty consistently over the last couple seasons.
Ridder's pretty good at certain concepts, right? If you want to run dagger concepts and those types of concepts, he did a really good job hitting those for the most part. Like he's the type of quarterback that Arthur Smith really liked, much to his chagrin, as we saw it turn out in Atlanta this past year. But like that sort of Ryan Tannehill type of quarterback that can operate the offense, is not going to necessarily be this huge playmaker. You're not going to sit there and say, man, this guy is carrying us. But he can be an effective game manager. The problem was just too many times, whether it was misreading leverage, him and his receivers not being quite on the same page, ball security issues. It just seemed like whenever things could go wrong for the Falcons this past year, things would go wrong and turnovers would come in bunches with Desmond Ridder throughout the season. But in terms of if he can just get that under control, I think he can be a very capable NFL backup. The question with Desmond Ridder, I think, well, we'll get into it later, but those are kind of the positives at this point.
Yeah, and listen, thanks for that. It's Josh Allen was a turnover machine his first couple of years. Eli Manning was a turnover machine his first couple of years. Like, I feel like it does, and I don't know, you're kind of an old soul when it comes to this, like I am. Like, the best quarterbacks of all time sat. They all sat. Like, the top 4 sat. Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years. Tom Brady sat. Patrick Mahomes sat for a year or, 15 weeks or 16 weeks. He played the last game. I mean, Desmond, he didn't, he sat here and there, but it's like a lot of times guys, how it takes babies' skulls to form? It takes a little while. It takes a while for the game to slow down for these guys. And sometimes, a lot of times, they're at a disservice by just getting thrown out there into the proverbial wolves and just saying, all right, let's go. It's the NFL now. So do you think that with a little bit more massaging and a little bit more of a restrictor plated offense like Drew Petzing runs, where it's very much run the ball, set up the play action, hit the tight end, right at the sticks, not as much down the field. Like, do you think that would cater to his skill set a little more if he were thrust into action?
Yeah, obviously I don't have as much of a grasp of Drew Petzing's offense as you do, but from what I understand this past year, they asked Kyler Murray to throw a lot more over the middle, right? And that's kind of really the strength of what Ridder does, is that sort of attack between the numbers, get the ball on crossing routes and tight ends and in breakers and all those types of things. I think that's something that he does well. I think the biggest concern with Desmond Ridder, and this showed up in the last couple of games, his last couple of starts, which led to his second benching this year. I do wonder a little bit about confidence, because I thought early in the season, he was making some early mistakes that were just like, hey, he's young, he's not necessarily seeing anything. Then in the middle of the season, the turnover kept coming, and I thought a lot of that, not to say it was just bad luck, but it was just more bad bounces of the ball, fumbles here, receivers zigging when he thought he was going to zag, and the defender making a play. And then I thought things started progressing after the bye week. And then he had the really bad decision at the end of the Carolina game in week 15, where basically the Falcons were driving to basically put the game away. He threw a pick and Carolina went down the field and scored. And then in the season finale, when Taylor Heinicke was injured, he started that game and he had a pretty solid first half, and then came out in the second half and threw two bad picks that were, I think, poor decisions. And so my concern with him is there was a little bit of a regression there at the end of the season in terms of decision making. And then it makes me wonder a little bit about his confidence. And then you throw on top of it the public statements by Falcons, coaches and front office people basically throwing him under the bus. That's my main concern with Desmond Ridder. So I think getting a fresh start in Arizona, if they can kind of work on rebuilding that confidence and sort of reducing some of those mental errors that kind of plagued him at the end of the season, I think he'll be fine moving forward.
Aaron Freeman, Locked On Falcons, joining me here talking Desmond Ridder. How much of that was Arthur Smith being on the hot seat and having to deflect? Or how much was that, like, it seemed potent down there that it was Desmond Ridder's fault and then there's too many weapons for them not to be winning more games?
Yeah, I mean, that's the narrative that came out of the season, and so far with the Falcons offseason move so far, just basically, Kirk Cousins and a couple of wide receivers, they're basically telling us that that's what they think the main issue was. It's hard to say. My personal opinion is this. I think Arthur Smith was feeling pressure to win, and I think the first time he benched Desmond Ridder was a mistake. And I think, no offense to Cardinals fans, I think if Desmond Ridder had started that game as well as the preceding game against the Vikings instead of Taylor Heinicke, the Falcons would have won those games, and that would have given the 2 wins that they would have made the playoffs. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I
would have liked for them to win that game too, just for the record, for the Cardinals are now where they would have been at 3. Just anyways. I
understand, but I think I don't know. It's tough to say how much of it, like basically the narrative is the Falcons issues were all Arthur Smith play calling issues and Desmond Ridder turning the ball over. And I think that's the simple, sort of the lazy sort of take from the Falcons season. I think there are other issues going on, but those were probably 2 of the more glaring issues. So, Ridder's going to be the scapegoat in Atlanta, but I wouldn't pay too much attention if I'm a Cardinals fan.
Fair enough. And you know what? One last question here, and this is actually really important, especially because the Cardinals are trying to bridge the gap from dysfunction to actual functionality and cohesion and real culture and stuff. People throw the term culture around a lot when there's dysfunction. Most of NFL franchises have some sort of dysfunction, unless you're the Steelers or the Ravens. And the Steelers even, around Mike Tomlin, I don't know if you call that dysfunction in the Steel City or not, whether he should still be head coach or not. But like most teams have some sort of flair that's not so great, and they have to overcome it. The Cardinals, one of the more potent dysfunctional organizations, and with Jonathan Gannon and Monty Osborne trying to shift this completely away, being Arizona Cardinals in name and uniform only, they've signed some free agents who want to be here. Jonah Williams wanted to be here. This was his spot. DeeJay Dallas over from Seattle, he lives here. He's like, this is perfect. Mack Wilson from New England, I want to play with Kazir White. This is awesome. I want to be here and win. What's Desmond Ridder like around the team? Good teammate, even when he's holding a clipboard, when he's playing, when things aren't going well. What's your clearest distinction? Because that's so important to this fragile ecosystem the Cardinals are trying to develop here.
I think that's where, one of the things that you could say Ridder shines in. One of the things that the Falcons did do, even when Desmond Ridder was the backup, he still was running sort of the quarterback meetings over sort of a Taylor Heineke. By all accounts, he's a great teammate. He's going to be a good presence in that quarterback room for Kyler Murray, even if he doesn't have the sort of typical decade of NFL experience that you typically see around the NFL when it comes to sort of that backup quarterback that kind of functions as like a assistant quarterbacks coach. But I do think Desmond Ridder has what it takes from a personality standpoint, from a mental makeup standpoint, that if that's what you're looking for him to be in Arizona to sort of, help out Kyler Murray again. I know Kyler has a lot more experience than Desmond Ridder does, but in terms of being that sort of good teammate, I think Desmond Ridder can do that.
Yeah, that's great. That's one of the better answers because, Justin Jones was a signing that was kind of eye-rolled by a lot of national media members coming over from Chicago, a couple guys that I really trust who said, not somebody that's going to elevate anything, but everybody loves him. It's like you need people like that. If it's a backup guy who's not a real threat to taking over QB1, who could still have that, have that presence for a team that speaks volumes as to the character of the guy. Aaron Freeman at Locked On Falcons, free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. You want to hear about the new Rondale Moore stuff? Aaron's going to be talking about it a lot with the wide receiver 3, the Atlanta Falcons acquired in the trade from Desmond Ridder. Aaron, thanks for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
What's the salary cap looking like for the Cardinals? We'll talk about it next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered entirely. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Awesome getting my buddy Aaron Freeman on from Locked On Falcons to talk to Desmond Ridder. Like the makeup of this team is still TBD. Which new leaders are going to emerge? Where are they going to come from? It doesn't always have to be the bona fide dictionary definition of your main edge rusher is a leader and your quarterback is the leader and your safety is the leader. It's like it doesn't have to be that. Desmond Ridder, while only being in the league a couple of years, can add some value to this team. That was one of the most important things because I didn't know what Aaron was going to say. I didn't know what he was going to say. When I asked him, what is he like as a person? What is he like around the field? I'm assuming he was, because he was a total jerk and nobody likes him. But him saying that that's probably his best quality, that's a good thing. That's a good thing because remember, I'm not overhyping a backup quarterback. He's not going to take the place of Kyler Murray unless Kyler Murray were to, unfortunately, get injured. I don't even know if he's going to be the second string guy. We don't know yet. It's so early. And I think it's important to embrace and receive all of this new information with the new players being signed and the questions about what they're going to do with the 4th overall pick, et cetera, with the Minnesota conversation coming up, things like that. Like, this is a great time to just gather information, have conversations, but none of this is make a decision tomorrow. None of this is, Desmond Ridder should be the number 2 or Clayton Tune should be the number 2. I love debate as much as the next guy or gal, as much as the next person. But I think that really being existential and appreciating things in real time as you're starting to see a shift, I don't really know what to call this. I don't really know what to call what we're experiencing right now. And I struggle with a term to stamp on it. I say culture shift. I say trajectory change. I say things like that, which is what this is. But I struggle with experiencing things that make sense. I don't say that as a joke. These things make sense. Signing Jonah Williams to a 2-year deal makes sense. Trading for Desmond Ridder makes sense. Trading away Rondale Moore made sense. And it's more important to really bring that in, because when things actually do hit the fan, meaning when decisions are going to have to be made at the end of April, and those couple days of the draft really will be the outline of I called it a mosaic. I think mosaics are more, artistic. Like, you're going to see the outside of the lines of whatever the picture is going to be that the Cardinals are going to be after the draft. You're going to be like, okay, this is what the bones are going to look like. And free agency is really just, does that signing make sense? Are they being active? Because last year was a ghost town. It was Death Valley. It was nothing. I mean, they brought in Kazir White and a couple others, but who was great? Who's going to be great for this team? But obviously nothing like what we've witnessed the first week of free agency, including legal tampering last week. And this is still very new. There's so much time left. There's so many big names left. But when I say big names, I'm not equating that to big money. Guys who used to be great, but not like 10 years ago, like 3 years ago, who could be had for a discounted price, who could add immediate credibility to specific position groups with the Arizona Cardinals, that which they don't have credibility now. And I looked on, over the cap's fantastic. The salary cap that the Cardinals have salary cap they have right now is $30 million. The effective salary cap, meaning what they can actually spend, is a little over $18 million. That's according to Over the Cap. And that's plenty. That's plenty. Like, if they don't sign another player before the start of the 2024 season, you can roll with this roster plus the draft. The cornerback room's already better. Didn't take much. You draft a corner, probably two. You probably need to add a corner. So even for this exercise, you probably need to add a corner. Offensive line's ready. Elijah Wilkerson's back. Like, here's the thing. Having a solid left tackle, whether it be Paris Johnson Jr. or Jonah Williams, irrespective of that, and you have Jalti Froholt at center, that can mask a little bit lesser than left guard play. And they may take the Barton kid out of Duke at 27 anyways to really shore that, because if that's the case, that'll be the best offensive line the Arizona Cardinals have had maybe in 20 years. That's not a joke. So maybe add another corner. Maybe you add a veteran pass rusher, something like that. But all in all, the defensive line has gotten better, even if they're rotational pieces. Plus, you've got the draft. Plus, you've got Dante Stills with his second year. Plus, you've got, Zaven Collins with his second year, most likely going to be playing off the edge. BJ Ojulari, second year. Kazir White's back. You got Mack Wilson, who's going to play at the next level. It's better. So there are a couple names that I looked at, and, again, these are bigger names who can't garner the money that they got with their last big contract. And there's 3 corners that I've been looking at. And, I've watched some film. I've asked some people that I trust, working in radio for over a decade. You're lucky enough to meet some people in completely different cities that cover different teams. The 3 names that can be had, you can probably sign 2 of these guys with the amount of money the Cardinals have left. And one is a little bit older, okay, who also played very well last year for the Cowboys. And the other 2 were cut for cap reasons with their respective teams from last season. Stephon Gilmore is still out there, okay? And before you groan and, say, oh, no, he's too old, not worth the money, he's not going to garner the money that he has, okay? And let's just look. This isn't – I implore people, and I need to start saying this more. Again, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. I'm never going to tell you, hey, you have to think this way or you're wrong. But I'm never going to tell you how to think and then just say, well, you're wrong. And it's my opinion that look at you look at the depth chart for the Arizona Cardinals cornerback room before making any sort of distinction on if a guy's worth it or not. Stephon Gilmore would come in and be the best corner on the team tomorrow. Everything is graded on a curve. Everything. You cannot directly compare the Arizona Cardinals to any other organization because when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter at all. The only time it really matters is trading interdivisionally or during the draft. Like, well, if they pass on them and then the Rams are picking right behind them, then you're going to have to see that guy twice a year for the next decade, things like that. But when they're just, free agents, no. Stephon Gilmore would be immediately the best corner on the team. One. Xavier Howard he was like the hot corner from not third base. Not third base. He was the more like the popular corner like 3 years ago, got the deal, and then he hasn't played very well since. It's common tale. But he's still pretty young. He's not 30 yet. I think it'd be an interesting look. And then the third one is Tre'Davious White. Like, I don't know if you listen, I'm not sure if you do, but I do Locked On NFL Thursday with Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans, my buddy. That's a national show. We talk more than just Cardinals. And I've said this is the third offseason. 2 years ago, I said, there's something wrong in Buffalo, and that is going to get blown up very soon if they don't win a Super Bowl. They haven't made a conference championship. So Tre'Davious White may be a lot better than what on paper looks. He's coming off an injury. Okay, he's 29, but corners can play until their early 30s. Easy. And the Cardinals really only need stopgap guys for the next couple years. Look at all the contracts. They're all 3-year deals when they're really 2 years. It would fit. And it'd be fun, and they'd be able to afford it, and it would add immediate credibility to a room of guys who have no credibility right now. We don't even know who's going to be on the roster besides Garrett Williams and Sean Murphy-Bunting. There's plenty of room. There's plenty of room. And again, this is a 2-year project for the Cardinals. That's what Monty Osborne set it up as, 2 or 3 years. And all 3 of those guys could play 3 years at least average cornerback play. Again, that which the Cardinals have had very little of over the last decade. Think about it. Look at the last decade. How many good corners have the Cardinals had? 1. Antonio Cromartie for a year. 1. Byron Murphy's not a good corner. He's an average corner. He's not a good corner. 1. It's time to change that. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Mock Draft Monday. This one is going to be fun. I kind of went where the yellow brick road took me, and I ended up with something pretty fascinating. I'll discuss it next. It's kind of a talking piece. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Dude, Selection Sunday was yesterday. Are you ready? Whether you're betting on a big upset, on a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook right now. New customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, etc. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down those nets. Final segment, Alex Clancy here, Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Aaron Freeman, great. Follow him at Locked On Falcons if you want, some insight on the Falcons. If you want to follow Rondo Morrisburg, he's a great follow. Good friend of mine, and was gracious enough to join me for a segment to talk about Desmond Ridder as a person. Not perfect. Probably an average quarterback. He's got a lot of room to grow, but he also, and I don't discuss this as much or I don't use this phrase as much as I normally do every day. You know this. First of all, thank you for hanging out. If this is your first listen to Locked On Cardinals, I truly appreciate it. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel if you'd like it, Locked On Arizona Cardinals, and you'll get notifications. You turn notifications on. I don't know if we, media members / you fans alike will have experienced what could be for the next couple seasons. And I know that's projection. It's a platitude. It's like, well, we don't know if we're going to experience it either. But if this works, And that's a big if. It's a big 0-1 jump. But if this works, this could be really fun. And let me explain what I mean, the difference between 2021 and now. Come on. I don't think there was one national media member or anybody that I talked to that really believed the Cardinals were legit. It wasn't sustainable. One injury. Well, James Conner went out, DeAndre Hopkins, and when DeAndre Hopkins got hurt, everything, that was it. That's not a sustainable roster. What Monty Osborne is trying to do is build sustainability. And he's starting from the foundation, starting from the lines. Signed a corner, starting from the lines. Defensive line, then offensive line. And now the fun begins. So with the mock draft, so I say what was I going to say? Oh, Desmond Ridder. Yeah, we're back to talking. So Desmond Ridder, that's right. I used to say Kyler Murray had a lot of, he had many oh my God moments where it's like, what was that? What was that? The big one now floating around Twitter is the broken play against Minnesota where he found Rondale Moore for the touchdown. Rondale Moore, they're like, oh, that was vintage Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore was wide open on a broken play because Patrick Peterson missed him in coverage. Rondale Moore caught the ball wide open, turned around, and ran in for a touchdown. I don't know why that's vintage. There's so many other great plays that Rondale Moore made in space, in between the 20s, between defenders, that's better than that. He turned around, caught the ball, and ran in the end zone. Patrick Peterson completely was in a blender for that play. Stop it. It was more about Kyler Murray. Desmond Ridder has shown a couple oh my God moments. Sure. I watched Red Zone and, you play against the Falcon every week because they've got a couple great skill position players. So you watch Desmond Ridder. Come on, let's be honest. That's kind of why we watch. And you're like, whoa, especially with his legs. And I think the Cardinals can definitely use him maybe in a couple packages. I'm not sure if you want to subject him. If he's the third string guy, maybe. I don't know if you want to subject him to injury when you run little, RPOs or things like that. But if something were to happen, I feel like with the tutelage of Drew Petzing and this offense, we can make it work with, he can make it work. And that'd be fun. So mock draft. Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. I'm not going to trade out of it because it's Looney Tunes with the mock draft stuff. So Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, and I'm going to introduce you to a name. I had Trevor Sikkema on this past Monday, a week ago, and he had a name that people kind of know. I mean, the draft pundits know. They know him as almost a no-doubter in the interior of the defensive line, but he's not, doesn't play at Texas, doesn't play at Alabama, doesn't play at Ellis. Like, he's a guy who plays at Illinois, and I want you to get familiar with his name. His name is Jer'zhan Newton, okay? If this guy drops to 27, the Cardinals must take it immediately. So he was there, and I kind of went a different way here. So it's like, okay, so if the Cardinals go Marvin Harrison Jr., and then you take a defensive lineman at 27, you got to go offensive line or corner it at 35, right? Not so fast. For those that are watching on YouTube, you see this. For those that are listening, I'll explain. At 35, one of the new trending upwards names due to his, speed, people call it quick twitch, ability, is Georgia's wide receiver Ladd McConkey. Okay, his numbers are there. Okay, and he's fast, catches everything. He's a great route runner, and he'd be a perfect slot guy. Can play outside a little bit, but he's fast, and he's a guy that is going to be taken around this range. I don't see him going in the first round, late first round. Who knows what Kansas City will do at 32, but at 35, he was there. And I'm like, you know what? Hollywood Brown's gone. You pair Marvin Harrison Jr. with Ladd McConkey, you have Michael Wilson, you have Greg Dortch, you're off to the races. Wide receiver room, a strength. The Cardinals still don't have a strength. The strongest position group for the Arizona Cardinals right now is the offensive line, which is shocking, but that's where it is right now. They still got to check all these boxes. And if you draft 2 wide receivers in the first 2 rounds with Ladd McConkey there, I think that would be a step in the right direction. Now, a popular name, T'Vondre Sweat from Texas, went at 66 with the Cardinals' first third-round pick. Another guy, interior defensive line. You have a strength, and you have these rotational guys that they brought in to complement these two young players on top of Dante Stills, then you have a defensive line that is run stuffing that will be able to collapse the pocket a lot better than the absence of a defensive line last year. Round 3, 71, Jonathan Brooks, another popular running back from Texas. He's not a Bijan, but he can do a lot of things, and the Cardinals need running back help. So if they don't bring in another running back, I think drafting one at the third round with that extra pick, I think is the right choice. And then I went back and forth here, looked at some offensive linemen at the end of the third round. Renardo Green, I watched some film on him. I did some research on him. He's 6 feet, almost 200 pounds. He's a press outside corner who likes to hit. The Cardinals need to get mean. Not mean in the sense of the personal fouls that we saw early in the season last season. Kazir White almost took Sam Howell's head off. Jalen Thompson had one. Paris Johnson Jr. had one, but I think he was just pulling somebody off a pile, which is a personal foul. The Cardinals need to get mean. They need to hit. The Cardinals haven't had a corner, not only a top corner for a long time. Patrick Peterson didn't like to hit guys. The Cardinals' corners need to be feared. And Renardo Green would be a great one. He'd be a steal at the end of the third round. So every mock draft is going to be a little bit different. You could spread it out. You do one, wide receiver, offensive lineman, one interior defensive lineman, one pass rusher, one running back, things like you could do that. Or, as I've been screaming from the mountaintops, and I know this isn't like, well, they haven't done this, so why haven't they done this yet? It's not that. It's the Cardinals need a strength. They need at least one strength that opposing teams will, scheme for. Offense, defense, doesn't matter. Take Kyler Murray out of it. The quarterback's going to be a strength no matter what. It's going to be schemed for no matter what. Is it the wide receivers? Cool. Is it the cornerback room? Awesome. Is it the pass rush? Great. Is it the interior defensive line? Awesome. Is it the offensive line? Perfect. It doesn't matter. Pick one and move the hell on. And that's what this next iteration of free agency is going to be. Where are you going to add talent that you don't have now while having that set? So then you can look towards the draft and really pinpoint need/best player available. That's how you build a team, baby. We just haven't seen it over the last decade. So for those that think this is going slow, for those that think this isn't fun, for those that think this isn't sexy, that's fine. You're completely entitled to your opinion. This is how teams are built. It's boring to some. For me, I'm in heaven. I am. And I hope the majority of you are too. Because remember, without you, there is no me, all right? I'll talk to you on Tuesday.